At the airport after a brutal argument, my parents and sister cancelled my ticket and left me stranded in Paris. No boarding pass. No passport in my hand. No phone to call for help. I stood there watching them walk through security without even looking back. That's when a man in an immaculate charcoal suit stepped toward me, leaned close, and whispered, "Pretend you're my wife. My driver will be here in 2 minutes." Then he gave me a cold, knowing smile. "Trust me," he said. "They're going to regret this." And they did. I just had no idea how much. My name is Camila Torres, and I was 39 years old the day my family decided I was disposable. It happened at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, under bright white lights that made everything feel clinical, like a surgery room. Clean. Detached. Bloodless. But what they did to me was anything but clean. We had arrived in Europe 5 days earlier, my parents, my younger sister Isabel, and me. The trip had been my idea. My money. My attempt to stitch together something that had been unraveling for years. After my divorce, I had been the fragile one. The one who needed supervision. The one who wasn't thinking clearly. In reality, I had simply stopped being their bank. For years I had helped them, covered mortgage gaps, paid Isabel's credit cards when she overextended, funded medical bills that somehow never seemed fully documented. I never kept receipts. I trusted blood. But after my divorce drained half my savings and most of my emotional reserves, I told them something radical. No more emergency transfers. I need to rebuild. Apparently, that made me unstable. At the airport check-in counter, everything detonated. "We need that money this week," my father said under his breath, jaw tight. I said I can't, I replied, trying to stay calm. "I'm not refusing forever. I just need time." My mother stepped closer. "You're being selfish. After everything we've done for you." Everything. That word always carried weight and debt. Isabel crossed her arms. "You've changed since the divorce. You're cold now." Cold. Because I wanted boundaries. While I was trying to de-escalate, Isabel had my phone, she'd borrowed it earlier for photos. My mother had my passport because she insisted on handling documents together. I didn't realize the trap until it was too late. They checked in. I assumed I was included. Then the airline agent frowned at her screen when I stepped forward. Your reservation has been cancelled." I blinked. Cancelled? That's impossible. It was voided 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago. While we were having lunch. I turned slowly toward my family. My father didn't look surprised. "You'll have to figure things out," he said evenly. "Maybe some independence will help you think clearly." "You cancelled my ticket." My voice cracked despite my effort. My mother pressed her lips together. "You've been spiraling. We're trying to protect you from making worse mistakes. Give me my passport." Silence. "Give me my phone." Isabel avoided my eyes. Security began glancing over. The tension was visible now. My father leaned closer. "You're overreacting. See? This is what we're talking about. Gaslighting. Calm. Surgical. They handed over nothing. And then, without a backward glance, they walked toward security. I stood there frozen as they disappeared through the gate. No boarding pass. No passport in my hand. No phone. No family. The humiliation burned worse than the fear. I rushed to the help desk, heart pounding, explaining between controlled breaths that my documents had been taken. The airline couldn't help without ID. Airport security grew impatient. "Madam, you must step away from the restricted area." That was the moment something inside me began to fracture. Not hysterically. Not loudly. Quietly. Like ice cracking beneath weight. And that was when he approached. He had been watching. Tall. Impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that looked tailored to his bones. Silver at his temples. Controlled posture. The kind of man who did not fidget. He stepped close enough that only I could hear him. "Pretend you're my wife. My driver is arriving in 2 minutes." I stared at him. "What?" His eyes were sharp, assessing, not predatory, not warm. Strategic. "Trust me," he added quietly. "They'll regret this." There was no time to analyze. Security was already signaling me again. I had 2 options. Break down publicly, or gamble. I slid my trembling hand into his. His grip was steady. Warm. Grounding. He turned toward security with calm authority. "There seems to be confusion. My wife's documents were misplaced during a family dispute. We'll resolve it privately." The word wife felt surreal in my ears. But the uniformed guard's demeanor changed instantly. Wealth speaks in silent dialects. We were escorted out without further resistance. Outside, a sleek black car waited. I glanced back once at the terminal, the place where my old life had just been amputated. As the car door shut and we pulled away, something hardened inside me. They thought they had left me powerless. They were wrong. The car door closed with a quiet, expensive thud. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Paris slid past in blurred streaks of gold and shadow outside the tinted windows. My pulse was still racing, my palms cold despite the warmth of the leather seat beneath me. The stranger sat beside me with composed stillness, as if orchestrating airport rescues for abandoned women was an ordinary Tuesday activity. "Breathe," he said calmly, not looking at me. "You're safe." Safe. The word almost undid me. I inhaled slowly, forcing oxygen into lungs that felt tight. "Who are you?" He turned then, studying me with sharp gray eyes. "Adrian Laurent. I'm 43. I run a private real estate investment firm based in New York." His voice carried faint traces of French beneath an American cadence. Controlled. Polished. I swallowed. Camila Torres. 39. Recently divorced. Apparently unstable, according to my family. A flicker of something, disapproval, crossed his face. "They took your documents deliberately," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." "And cancelled your return flight before confronting you." "Yes." He nodded once. "That's coordinated behavior. Not emotional. Strategic." Hearing someone name it correctly sent a strange rush of validation through me. I hadn't imagined the calculation. I hadn't overreacted. "They're going to try something," he added quietly. The words tightened my chest. "Like what?" "That depends on what assets you have." I hesitated. Then I answered honestly. "A Manhattan condo. Inherited from my grandparents. It's fully in my name." He didn't react outwardly, but the pause before his next sentence was deliberate. "Then they're not punishing you," he said. "They're isolating you." My stomach dropped. The car turned into a private terminal outside the main airport. A sleek jet waited on the tarmac. I stared at it. "What is this?" "My plane." Of course it was. He turned fully toward me now. "I didn't approach you out of charity, Camila. I appreciated that more than false kindness. I assumed as much." A faint, approving smile. "In 3 weeks, I'm hosting a charity gala in New York. It's not just philanthropy. It's where I secure a major waterfront development deal. Conservative investors. Traditional optics matter." I studied him carefully. And I'm a widower." The word landed heavy. My wife died 2 years ago. Since then, my younger brother has been quietly suggesting to the board that grief compromised my judgment. One investment underperformed. He's building a narrative. "That you're unstable." "Yes." The irony did not escape either of us. He continued. A public, stable marriage shuts that narrative down. Immediately. Silence settled between us, charged and precise. You want me to pretend to be your wife. For the gala and associated appearances. I let out a slow breath. You don't know me. I know how you handled betrayal in public, he replied evenly. You didn't scream. You didn't collapse. You tried to problem solve. That's rare. The jet stairs were being lowered now. What's in it for me? I asked. Immediate transport to New York. Legal assistance regarding whatever your family is planning. $50,000 upon agreement. New documents issued through my contacts tonight. $50,000. My pride flinched, but my logic didn't. And the risk? I pressed. He didn't dodge it. My brother will escalate. The press may dig. There will be scrutiny. And if I refuse, I still ensure you're not stranded. That surprised me. Why? He held my gaze evenly. Because what they did was calculated cruelty. The sincerity in that statement hit harder than the money. I stepped onto the jet. Inside, it was quiet luxury, muted lighting, cream leather, polished wood. Not flashy. Controlled. As the engines began humming, exhaustion crept into my bones. Adrian worked on his laptop across from me, giving space. But my mind was racing. If my parents had cancelled my ticket so smoothly, if they had kept my passport, if they had painted me as unstable before, they were laying groundwork. Conservatorship. The word surfaced uninvited. Control of assets. Control of decisions. Control of me. Anger replaced humiliation. After years of funding them, after rebuilding a loan post-divorce, they were trying to legally cage me. I looked at Adrian. One condition. He closed his laptop slowly. Go on. My identity remains protected as much as possible. I approve our backstory. And if this becomes damaging to me, I walk. Immediately. He considered. Then extended his hand. Agreed. His grip was firm again, not possessive, not soft. Professional. As the jet lifted into the night sky, Paris shrinking beneath us, something shifted inside me. I had been ambushed. But I had also just made a choice. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was aligning. Hours later, as dawn brushed the Manhattan skyline in pale gold, the jet descended. I watched the city emerge below. My family thought they had isolated me. Instead, they had pushed me toward something bigger. What they didn't know yet was that I was done being manageable. The Manhattan air felt different from Paris. Sharper. Faster. Less forgiving. By the time Adrian's car pulled into the underground garage of his Upper East Side building, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones, but adrenaline kept my mind alert. The lobby gleamed in polished marble and glass. The staff greeted Adrian with quiet respect. No curiosity. No questions. Power, I realized, isn't loud. It's assumed. Inside the private elevator, he spoke without looking at me. You'll have a guest suite. My housekeeper, Marta, will make sure you have everything you need. Thank you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The penthouse doors opened to panoramic windows overlooking the skyline. Morning light washed over the city in soft gold. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like distance. Distance from the airport. From my parents. From the version of me they still thought they could manipulate. In the guest suite, I showered, changed into clean clothes Marta provided, and finally picked up the new phone Adrian had left on the bedside table. I added one contact. Lena Morales. My cousin. The only person in my family who had ever quietly questioned my parents' control. She answered on the second ring. Camila. Where are you? Your mother called me 3 times. I closed my eyes briefly. What did she say? A pause. They're telling people you had some kind of breakdown in Paris. That you were paranoid. That you accused them of stealing from you and then ran off. The words didn't shock me. They chilled me. They cancelled my ticket, I said evenly. They took my passport and phone. I know, Lena whispered. I figured. But they're not stopping there. My pulse slowed the calm before a storm. What are they doing? They've contacted an attorney. I felt it in my stomach before she finished. They're exploring a temporary conservatorship. There it was. The plan. They're saying you're emotionally unstable after the divorce. That you're making irrational financial decisions. They mentioned the condo. My inheritance. My grandparents' last gift. They're positioning themselves as protectors, Lena continued softly. They're gathering old emails. Doctor visits for anxiety. Cancelled appointments. Anything that paints a picture. A picture of incapacity. Calculated. Layered. Patient. I began pacing the room. In New York, conservatorships aren't easy, Lena added quickly. They'd need proof you can't manage your own affairs. But if they create doubt, they create control, I finished. Silence stretched between us. I'm not unstable, I said quietly. I know you're not. But doubt has power even when it's false. After the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I walked downstairs. Adrian was in his home office, sleeves rolled up, reading something dense and legal-looking. I need your lawyer, I said without preamble. He looked up immediately. What happened? They're filing for conservatorship. His expression sharpened, not surprised. I suspected they might. They're using my divorce. Anxiety appointments. Old emails. He leaned back in his chair slowly. That's sophisticated. They're not worried about me, I said flatly. They're worried about losing access. Yes, he agreed. There was no pity in his tone. Just clarity. I won't be controlled, I said. It wasn't dramatic. It was a decision. He picked up his phone. Martin Keller, he said when the line connected. I need you here within the hour. Martin Keller arrived with the energy of a man who disliked losing. Late 50s. Crisp suit. Sharp eyes. He listened without interruption while I explained everything. When I finished, he folded his hands. In New York, they must prove incapacity. Emotional distress alone is insufficient. We counter aggressively. How? I asked. First, we file an affidavit of competency. Independent psychological evaluation if necessary. Second, we submit financial records showing responsible management. Third, we demonstrate motive that their interest aligns suspiciously with property control. And the passport theft? I asked. That supports coercive intent. Adrian added quietly, her disappearance narrative collapses once we establish documentation was withheld. Martin nodded. Exactly. For the first time since Paris, something solid formed under my feet. Strategy. Preparation. Defense. But Adrian wasn't finished. There's something else, he said. I turned toward him. My brother, Victor, filed internal concerns about my leadership this morning. He cited instability after my wife's death. The symmetry was almost cruel. They're both building incapacity narratives, I realized. Yes. We were no longer just co-conspirators in a social facade. We were parallel targets. Martin looked between us. Then we fight on both fronts. That night, after legal plans were set in motion, I stood alone by the penthouse window. The city glowed below, indifferent, enormous. I thought about the airport again. The moment my father walked away. The way my sister avoided my eyes. The precision of it. They hadn't wanted me stranded. They had wanted me disoriented. Dependent. Grateful to be rescued by them. Instead, I had chosen a different alliance. I heard footsteps behind me. Adrian stopped a few feet away, careful not to intrude. "You're very composed," he observed quietly. "I'm very angry," I corrected. A faint nod. "That's useful." I glanced at him. "You don't seem surprised by any of this." He hesitated. "When someone benefits from your vulnerability," he said slowly, "they rarely relinquish that advantage voluntarily." There was experience behind those words. Not theory. "Did your brother ever try to control you before your wife died?" I asked. "Yes." The answer was immediate. But grief gave him an opening. Silence fell again, not uncomfortable, but weighted. For the first time since Paris, I allowed myself to feel something other than strategy. Fear. Not of losing money. Not of public perception. But of being declared incompetent in a courtroom by the very people who raised me. I straightened. "No," I whispered to myself. Adrian heard it anyway. "No," he asked softly. "They don't get to rewrite me." His gaze held mine for a long moment. "Good," he said quietly. "Because they won't." Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, something had shifted again. This wasn't survival anymore. This was counterattack. The rumors began quietly. A business blog hinted that Adrian's leadership was emotionally compromised. An anonymous source claimed he had been erratic since his wife's death. The same week, Camila received formal notice. Her parents had officially filed for temporary conservatorship. The language was surgical. Emotional instability. Impaired judgment. Financial recklessness. They weren't attacking her character. They were attacking her competence. Instead of reacting, Camila did something unexpected. She scheduled an independent psychological evaluation. Voluntarily. Clean. Documented. Professional. When the results came back declaring her fully competent, Martin filed them immediately with the court. Control thrives in silence. Camila chose documentation. The gala wasn't just social. It was strategic. Investors watched Adrian carefully. Victor circulated subtle doubt, questioning Adrian's focus. Then Camila did something no one anticipated. She stepped into conversation with 3 key investors and calmly outlined Adrian's 5-year expansion plan, numbers, projections, acquisition targets. Flawless. Not rehearsed. Understood. The room shifted. Victor saw it happen. Doubt moved away from Adrian and attached itself to him. That night, a prominent investor publicly reaffirmed confidence in Adrian's leadership. The narrative cracked. Martin uncovered something critical. Camila's parents had contacted a property manager months before Paris asking procedural questions about assuming financial oversight if their daughter became incapacitated. Before the airport. Before the divorce narrative. Before the alleged instability. It wasn't reaction. It was preparation. In court, that timeline mattered. Motive became visible. And judges care about motive. The courtroom was colder than Camila expected. Her mother avoided her eyes. Her father looked certain. Until the documentation began. Independent evaluation. Financial records. Proof of passport withholding. Pre-Paris property inquiries. Then Camila spoke. Calm. Measured. Precise. "I am not unstable. I am inconvenient." Silence. The judge denied temporary conservatorship. Petition dismissed. Her parents' strategy collapsed, not dramatically, but decisively. The city looked different at night. Not softer. Not kinder. Just honest. From the penthouse windows, Manhattan stretched in silver and gold, restless and alive. Traffic moved in thin rivers of red. Office towers flickered with late ambition. Somewhere below, people were still negotiating, still building, still fighting to be taken seriously. Camila rested her palm against the cool glass. Weeks had passed since the courtroom. Weeks since the judge's voice, calm and controlled, had said the words. Petition for temporary conservatorship is denied. No drama. No raised voices. No cinematic collapse. Just law meeting evidence. And truth winning quietly. Her parents hadn't looked at her when they walked out. Not because they were ashamed, but because they had miscalculated. They had expected tears. A breakdown. A scene. Instead, they got documentation. Across the room, Adrian ended a call and set his phone down. His movements had changed too. Less guarded. Less braced for impact. Victor's final attempt had failed spectacularly. The board vote he orchestrated, framed as a stability review, was meant to force Adrian into defensive territory. But the investor who had publicly supported Adrian at the gala had quietly consolidated shares. When the vote came, it wasn't close. Victor hadn't shouted, hadn't argued. He had simply nodded once, as if this had always been a possibility, and resigned 3 days later to pursue other ventures. Corporate language for defeat. Now the headlines were different. CEO stabilizes company after internal dispute. Strategic leadership wins board confidence. Narratives change quickly when they lose funding. Camila turned from the window. It's quiet, she said. Adrian walked closer, stopping beside her but not touching. Power struggles end quietly, he replied. Only insecurity needs noise. She let out a slow breath. For months, she had been braced for impact. Every phone call felt like a trap. Every letter, a threat. Every glance from a stranger carried imagined judgment. But something had shifted. Not externally. Internally. I thought winning would feel dramatic, she admitted. He glanced at her. And it feels stable. He nodded once. Stability is underrated. Silence settled between them, not tense, not uncertain. Earned. Her phone vibrated softly on the table. She already knew who it would be. Her mother. The first call since the ruling. Camila watched it ring. Watched the name glow on the screen. Months ago, that name could reduce her to apology and confusion. Now, it was simply information. She answered. Hello. A pause. Then her mother's voice, composed, careful. We think things went too far. We. Still plural. Still united. Camila didn't sit down. Yes, she said evenly. They did. Another pause. We were worried about you. No, Camila replied. You were worried about losing access. Silence expanded on the other end. For the first time in her life, she didn't rush to fill it. Her mother's tone shifted slightly. Softer. Strategic. We can move forward. As a family. Camila looked out at the skyline again. She understood something now that she hadn't understood in Paris. Family is not immunity. It is proximity. And proximity can be weaponized. I will move forward, Camila said calmly. But not under supervision. That's not what we meant. It was exactly what you meant. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I'm not angry anymore, she continued. But I'm not available for control. The line went quiet. And then. We only wanted what was best. Camila smiled faintly. That would have required asking me. She ended the call gently. Not dramatically. Just, done. Adrian hadn't interrupted. He had simply listened. You didn't hesitate, he observed. No, she said. Because she finally understood the difference between cruelty and boundaries. Cruelty punishes. Boundaries clarify. She wasn't punishing her parents. She was removing access. And that distinction changed everything. Later that night, they stepped onto the balcony. The February air was sharp, but clean. You know, Adrian said, resting his hands lightly on the railing, when my wife died, everyone treated me like I was fragile. Camila turned toward him. Were you? Yes. Honest. Immediate. But fragility isn't incompetence. And people confuse the two. She felt that settle inside her. Her anxiety. Her divorce. Her grief. None of it had meant she was incapable. It had meant she was human. They tried to freeze us in a moment, she said quietly. Yes. And we kept moving. He looked at her then, not as a rescuer. Not as an ally in crisis. But as an equal. You didn't need saving in Paris, he said. No. You needed space. Yes. The wind tugged gently at her hair. Below, the city pulsed, indifferent and alive. Months ago, she had stood in an airport abandoned. Passport gone. Phone dead. Control stripped. Now she stood above Manhattan with full legal autonomy, documented competence, and something even more powerful. Self-definition. Do you regret it? Adrian asked quietly. The fight? He nodded. She thought carefully. No. Because the fight had revealed something essential. Not about her parents. Not about Victor. About herself. She had been raised to equate obedience with love. To confuse compliance with peace. To believe that stability meant silence. Now she understood. Peace without autonomy is not peace. It is containment. And she would never live contained again. Adrian studied her expression. You've changed, he said. Yes. How? She looked back at the skyline, but this time, it didn't feel distant. It felt chosen. I'm no longer afraid of being misunderstood. He absorbed that. That's rare. It's expensive, she corrected softly. It had cost her illusions. But it had given her clarity. Weeks later, the company's stock stabilized. The legal files were closed. The press moved on to newer scandals. Her parents stopped calling. Not out of acceptance. Out of irrelevance. Camila resumed work, consulting independently, building her own portfolio, making decisions without permission. One evening, as she reviewed documents at the long dining table, Adrian walked past and paused. You look settled. She smiled slightly. I am. And she meant it. Not because everything was perfect. Not because conflict would never return. But because she now understood something fundamental. No one could declare her incompetent without her cooperation. No one could rewrite her unless she handed them the pen. She had once been positioned as fragile. Now she was positioned as formidable. Not louder. Not colder. Just undeniable. The city lights flickered beyond the glass. And this time, she wasn't looking down at Manhattan as someone who had escaped disaster. She was looking at it as someone who had survived design. And redesigned herself.